Hi everybody, Ronan here, and today we are going to be chatting about the 3.7 banners that have just dropped. We already knew the 5 stars from the live stream, Yoimiya and Yae Miko. Now we have 4 stars, Chongyun, Yunjin, and of course the brand new character Kirara. Now, at first glance, it's pretty underwhelming, let's be honest. Yoimiya, bless her, never has the best banner sales. Yae Miko is a very lover or hater type of character. And the 4 stars, Chongyun, let's face it, he's not great. Yunjin, great buffer, but very niche. And Kirara, people that have been keeping up with the leaks, they know, again, she's not that great. But you delve a little bit deeper and they're not that bad. Yoimiya is actually one of the best single target DPS in the game, and with the right amount of investment in the right situations, she can outperform Hu Tao. Yae Miko, while she is clunky to play in an aggravate team, absolutely busted. Kirara is a very, very fun looking character. Yunjin works with a lot of different DPS. We'll start with Chongyun. Cryo, Claymore character. His kit looks really, really interesting at first glance. But when you delve a little bit deeper into it, the interesting parts just don't piece together right. He's got a cryo infusion. That's pretty much the main selling point of Chongyun. He can infuse sword, claymore, polearm wielding characters with cryo. But you're playing Circle Impact with that. And it's only up for 2/3 of the time. Now, I've used this for some really, really fun teams. I actually had for a little bit a freeze Kasra team, which was ridiculously fun. Using Chongyun, Singsho, and Rosaria. But outside of running around overworld and, breezing a ton of hillachills, it didn't really work that well. The absolute best part of Chongyun's kit is actually his burst. It does a lot of damage and it's really low cost, and it's actually possible to melt each hit of it. You pair him with someone like a Xiangling who can consistently apply pyro. You drop those spirit swords and each one of them melts for massive, massive damage. But are you really going to run Chongyun just for a burst support over someone like, for example, Rosaria, who can deal a lot of damage with her burst and buff your character's crit? Not really. He does also have the passive, which is increasing the normal attack speed of sword, claymore, and polearm characters, but normal attack speed isn't all that valuable. Poor old Chongyun. Very cool character, very fun. Realistically, not worth pulling. Now, let's move on to Yunjin. Yunjin is a Geo polearm user who buffs normal attacks. Now, his skill deals quite a bit of damage. It's pretty good for generating particles. The main focus of the kit is her burst. So when normal attack damage is dealt to opponents, bonus damage will be dealt based on Yunjin's current defense. Now what that does is it adds an extra instance of damage, which at level 9 is 55% of Yunjin's defense. And that takes into account any defense buffs that you have at the time casting Yunjin's burst. So if you've got a main DPS whose main source of damage is normal attacks, someone like a Yoimiya, Yunjin's going to be a very, very good partner for them. The main issue with this, beyond the fact that she's a Geo character, which takes her completely out of the resonance equation, unless you're going to run her with a second Geo character to gain that Geo resonance, which the vast majority of times is going to be a damage loss, she's going to be taking the spot of likely an Animo character, which in a lot of teams is just not worth it. So she's a very, very niche buffer who's very limited in the teams that she can work in. But in the teams that she works in, she is absolutely amazing. The other thing to remember with Yunjin's buff is it does have a trigger quota. So the maximum number of damage instances it can deal is 30. A lot of times that isn't going to be a massive issue. Certainly not running her with someone like Yoimiya, who's very single target focused. But there are like Ayato teams that she can work in, and Ayato's slashes from his E do deal AoE damage. So if you're running her with someone like Ayato, whose normal attacks deal AoE damage, you're going to run through that trigger quota pretty quickly. But you put enough ER on Yunjin, you play your rotations correctly, and it shouldn't be a huge issue. Kirara. Oh, poor Kirara. So much potential, absolutely wasted. Our first true Dendro Shielder. Yes, Baiju gives you a shield with his burst, but his shield isn't there really to shield. It's there just as a bit of an interruption resistance. Kirara, on the other hand, is designed specifically as a shielder. The problem Kirara has, she has absolutely no off-field Dendro application. And as a defensive character, you don't want them to take up much field time. You literally want her to come in, press her E, press her burst, and swap out again. So the fact that to get any Dendro application out of her, beyond the one instance from pressing her E, or the RNG Dendro application from her burst, you have to hold her skill and run around with the cat box, which, as fun as that's going to be in Overworld, is not really something you want to do in, say, the Abyss or a Domain. You want to get in there, get her shield up, drop her burst, swap out. Now, if you can get her C4, she adds coordinated attacks, but that's her C4. Until you get that, yes, she can be a decent defensive option in, say, a spread or aggravate team, but outside of that, she doesn't apply enough Dendro to actually warrant a spot. Me, it's really hard to find any huge positives from looking at her kit. Her burst just spreads a load of bombs around, a bit like Klee's elemental skill, and they trigger on contact or after 12 seconds. It deals a nice big chunk of damage, and the bombs, if they actually manage to hit an enemy, they deal decent damage, but you can't rely on it for Dendro application. The shield is pretty good. It's 27% of her max HP. It's a 10 to 12k shield. It's about the same as Diona's. It's not bad, but again, without the Dendro application, you're going to throw her onto an aggravate team to get Dendro resonance along with the electro resonance. I'll give her a shot, but for that, you're dropping a Kazuhara or a Sucrose. It's not worth it. You could put her in instead of, say, Yao Yao. That's who you're using. That's who I use on my Yae aggravate team. I use Yao Yao as my Dendro, but Yao Yao's got consistent Dendro application. So overall, fun looking character. How useful she's actually going to be, we'll have to wait and see. A lot of people didn't think that much of Yao Yao when she first came out. Now everyone thinks she's better than Baiju. So we'll see. I'm going to get her. I'm going to build her. I'm going to have some fun with her. Now to the main event, the 5 stars. We'll start with Yoimiya. She's very flexible and very free-to-play friendly. So the big comparison for Yoimiya is always to Hu Tao. Now, damage-wise, the gap isn't as big as everyone claims it to be. In single target, AoE, Hu Tao can perform pretty well in AoE, but Yoimiya has absolutely zero AoE damage. But the advantages that Yoimiya has over Hu Tao come in her, let's call it, playability. So she's mechanically much easier to play than Hu Tao. She doesn't require the animation cancelling that you need to reach those ridiculous DPS numbers. Hu Tao, you need to learn stamina management if you want to use her more efficient dash cancelling, or you need to learn jump cancelling, which, as someone that's played a lot of Yae Miko, isn't the easiest thing. Yoimiya also works on a lot of different teams. So you can run with a lot of different team compositions, whereas Hu Tao really does only have the 2 teams. Yoimiya also has more flexible weapon options. Her free-to-play and blow spender options are actually really rather good. You know, if we look over on KQM, obviously her signature, the Thunder Impulse, is without a doubt the best weapon, and it's about 10% better than R5 Rust. But you go beyond that, and if you've got an R5 slingshot, which if you've been playing for any length of time, you're going to have, that's only 5% less DPS than Rust. And it's only 15% DPS less than an R1 Thunder Impulse. You know, if you can't get a 5-star weapon, 4-star in Rust that drops everywhere, a 3-star that everyone will have got probably 5 copies of just trying to get Yoimiya. She's also got a lot of different artifact options as well. Everyone hates the Crimson Witch domain, but Yoimiya's best in slot, Shiminawa. If you've been in there farming Emblem for all your support characters, you've probably managed to get your hands on a fairly decent 4-piece Shiminawa set. So you slap an R5 3-star bow, a 4-piece Shiminawa, and Yoimiya's good to go. If you look at her kit, her burst does nothing. Go over here, where we've got a level 90 Yoimiya with some decent artifacts. What's her attack? 2300. Her burst at level 9, 216% of that. So her burst does about 5k damage. Sacrificing that to get the damage boost from Shiminawa, absolutely worth it. And you go on to her teams. Yoimiya teams are generally pretty damn simple. You'll have Yoimiya, you'll have a Hydro unit, which 99.9% of the time is going to be either Xingqiu or Yelan. Of the 2, Xingqiu is better. Reason being is rain swords hit on every normal attack, whereas Yelan's are around about every other, and they trigger every 2 seconds. So depending on how fast you're normal attacking, if you've got any speed buffs, etc., it could be every 2 or 3 hits, which isn't great for damage, but from a hydro application perspective is absolutely fine. You're then going to have another pyro unit. Usually that's going to be Bennett, but there are other options. It doesn't have to be Bennett. You're going to need a shielder or interruption resistance character. In an absolutely ideal world, Zhongli. So if you're talking Yoimiya's absolutely busted best of the best team, it's going to be Yoimiya, Xingqiu, Bennett, Zhongli. But the other options aren't far behind. I don't have Zhongli, so I need, for my team, I need another shielder. Or interruption resistance. Xingqiu's interruption resistance is not bad. My experience using Xingqiu on my Hazel national team, his interruption resistance isn't quite enough. So an additional form is needed, in my opinion. I might not always be able to run Bennett with Yoimiya. So the buffer in my version of the team is going to be Yunjin. So we're going to have Yoimiya, Yunjin, Yelan. I like the fact that with Yelan, you don't have to sacrifice the range like you do with Xingqiu. Now, I'm pretty sure you can guess where this is going, but I have a C6 Thoma. Thoma is a Pyro Shielder whose shield refreshes on normal attacks. So, yes, his shield isn't quite as strong as Zhongli's, can be very, very strong. You're playing at range with a normal attacking character, you're going to rack up the stacks on his shield very quickly, and it's not going to break as easily as if you were using a melee character. And the other good thing, Thoma, is his C6, any character protected by his shield gets a 15% normal attack damage boost. So you've got that nice little bit of extra damage from his fiery collapse, and you've got his shield, and you've got the attack buff. Is he as good as Zhongli? Absolutely not, but he works. I'm pretty sure this team will perform pretty well. Is it going to be up to Hu Tao double hydro damage standards? God, no. But will it clear content? Absolutely. There is one other option for that pyro slot. An option that I will be including in a Yoimiya video. And that's a certain 5-star pyro claymore character that received a lot of hate recently. And I'm just going to leave that there. Last but certainly not least, we've got Yae Miko, one of my favourite characters in the entire game. And yes, even to play. So we'll get some of the negatives out of the way. Yes, she's a little annoying to play. She takes a lot of field time. You can get interrupted while trying to set up her E's. But she does so much damage, especially in Dendro teams. The combination of her with Fischl, especially if you've got some decent EM investment on Yae to boost the damage of her totems, is ridiculous. And no, it's not mostly Fischl. I don't have C6 Fischl, so you're not getting that extra damage from her and still absolutely deleting stuff. Yes, it does take some getting used to with Yae. I'm not going to deny that. I'm not going to play around that. Yae is one of those characters that it's a risk-reward pull. She does a lot of damage, but she can be really awkward to play at first. So if you think you can persist with learning how to play her, learning how to position, all that stuff, then you will absolutely get rewarded. There's also the risk of you think you can learn all that, but then she just gets really, really irritating. So she's one that me personally, I would absolutely recommend anyone pull for her, but I'm a little biased. So taking Yae's simp cap off for a few minutes, let's delve into her kit a bit. Her normal attacks are some of the prettiest animations I've ever seen. People sleep on Yae's N1C combo. You look at that. That's not an insignificant amount of damage. It's not a main DPS amount of damage, but it's not insignificant either. And her animations can be cancelled quite easily. So her charge attack, it's got this really long, pretty animation that you don't really want to see every time, but it's fairly easy to jump cancel it once you figure out the timing. It's not an awkward timing like someone like a Hu Tao, and that can speed everything up and make her a lot easier to play. But her E is where the main focus of her kit is. And this is where the positioning kind of comes into play. If you lead off with Yae in Abyss, in a domain, you can set her totems in the middle of the arena and they can hit almost the entire arena. And the other thing is this here. For every point of EM Yae Miko has, it increases the damage of the totems by 0.15%. So just by running an EM stance over attack stance, you're boosting the damage of those by 28%. You throw in some EM substats on that, and you're getting quite a lot of extra damage. Now, you don't want to go full EM on Yae, but it is very beneficial to have either an EM weapon or an EM stance on her, just to boost the turrets, because they are her main source of damage. And we get onto her burst. Her burst is a huge point of contention because it is a very, very high cost burst and she doesn't produce a lot of energy. So people often talk about the fact that you need to run a hell of a lot of ER on Yae and you need to run a battery, blah, blah. But if we come over to an ER calculator, if you're running her as the solo Electro in a spread team, which people have tried to do, because not only can she help consistently keep up quicken with her turrets, you're getting quite a lot of aggravate damage as well. So in that, you do see that you're going to need to run about 290% ER, because none of this team is. I set this up as a very extreme example because there's not a lot of particle generation in this team. And you can see Zhongli produces even less particles per second than Yae does. So if you're running Yae as a solo Electro, yes, you're going to need to stack a ton of ER on her. But as you can see, in the team that I tend to run, which is the official Yae combo, but I use Kazuha, I use Yao Yao as my Dendro. In this team, you need around about 140% ER, which with my garbage artifacts is pretty easy to get through substats alone. As you can see, you don't need to run a ton of ER on Yae to have her burst up on cooldown. She is very energy hungry if you're not running her on field. But let's say we're running her off field and we're going to use her on a Kaching team. Let's have a look. Oh, that's Kazuha. We want Kaching. So in this case, I would run either Fav on Yae or I'd run Fav on Yao Yao. Point being, she's not as extreme of an energy hungry character as a lot of people make her out to be. The other thing to remember with Yae's burst is the fact that you need to have her 3 totems up on field before you activate it. If you're trying to burst every rotation, then she ends up taking a lot of field time, which is where putting her in the right situations is key. You need to almost run her in a more quick swappy type of team. One thing I've done quite a few times is I've run her with Tighnari as my Dendro unit, and you play on the fact that Tighnari as a charge shot DPS is very, very quick swappy. You throw out his skill, you use his 3 charge shots really quickly, so you swap back into Yae. You do Yae things. No one is taking a massive amount of field time, but everyone's getting bit, and the rotations are really, really flexible that way. And that's just my play style. That's the sort of play style I prefer, and Yae fits right in with that. If you are someone that prefers that more set rotation of play style, you are going to have to adapt your rotations to fit Yae in, or just don't pull her. And that also leans into her gearing. We talked a bit about how inflexible her teams are. Her gearing is even worse. She wants her signature weapon. That is far and away her strongest weapon. Beyond that, it gets a little trickier. If you've been lucky, unlucky, if you're a Yae player, unlucky if you're not, to get Skyward Atlas. Skyward Atlas, outside of her signature, is her best weapon. Because she doesn't snapshot, the massive attack stat on Atlas is huge for her and does enable you to run an EM Sans on her without losing a huge amount of damage from her normal attacks and her burst. Another option, if you are a low spender, if you've ever bought the Battle Pass, Solar Pearl is amazing on her, but only on field. When you learn how to cancel her normal attacks, you can quite easily normal attack, cancel into her totems to get that first damage boost to her totems, because she does have that on-field presence with her E consistently. You've got the buffs from the Solar Pearl always active. For free-to-plays, Hakushin Ring looks nice on paper, but it's garbage. You can only get the passive if you're on field. But if you're on field, you don't want an energy recharge weapon. Don't use it. Mapemara, however, is good. You need 2 reactions, but if you're running an aggravate team, those 2 reactions happen really quickly. Now, if you're running her off field, personally, only weapon I would consider is Fav. Simple. If you're running her off field, you do need a lot more energy recharge on her, and a lot of her teams are very energy hungry as well, unless you're running her as a support for Raiden, and it enables you to burst every rotation. It's a win-win. Off field, there aren't a lot of great options for her. If you're not going to use Fav, you're going to use a stat stick. So a Skyward Atlas, something that gives you a bit more crit, a bit more EM. Now on to Artifacts. She really only has 2 options. First one being the standard 2 attack, 2 elemental damage. In Yae's case, that would be 2 attack percent with 2-piece Thunder and Fury, which up until the release of Gilded was probably her best. 4-piece Gilded Dreams is absolutely phenomenal on her. If we're looking at the Yae Yao official Kazuha team that I run, for 8 seconds after triggering Aggravate, you'll get in 14% attack buff and an extra 100 EM. And it triggers even when not on the field. So, for me at least, this has become a set and forget. This is all around an amazing artifact set for Yae, and other people will disagree with me, of course, but in my eyes at least, it's almost become her signature set. She doesn't really benefit massively from 4-piece Thunder and Fury. Increases damage caused by Overload, Electrocharge, Superconduct, and Hyper Bloom by 40%. You're not really going to run her in Hyper Bloom. Increases damage bonus conferred by Aggravate by 20%. You can get that Aggravate damage boost just by running more EM and more attack. Doesn't benefit at all from the skill cooldown. Some people will say 2-piece is better. For me personally, I think Gilded Dreams is better. Team-wise, you've got 2 options, because I wouldn't advise using her as the solo Electro in a spread team. I also would not advise trying to use her as a Hyper Bloom trigger. She's not consistent enough. So that kind of limits you to team archetypes. Aggravate, Electrocharged, or Taser. For Taser teams, running her off field, I actually like her in the Sucrose Taser teams, where you're running Sucrose plus Hydro unit. So if you feel the need for a healer, you run Kokomi. If you don't feel the need for a healer, you run Singsho. And then you tack on the official Yae Electro Core onto it. And I've had some really good results out of it, and it's a really fun team to play. And because you've got official there, you're batterying Yae Miko through Oz, and you're just dealing a shitload of electro damage. and with Sucrose on field running 4-piece VV, giving the elemental mastery bonus to Yae. Her turrets are dealing even more damage. It's fun. It's very, very fun. I've also run that with Hazo as my Animo unit because I just love Hazo's playstyle. It doesn't deal as much damage as the Sucrose variant, but I find it a lot more fun to play. Her main team archetype is Aggravate, and specifically Aggravate with Fischl. And you'll see that in a lot of team recommendations where you need a battery with the Yae to be able to get max damage. So you're either going to run her with Fischl as a second off-field electro unit, or you run her off-field with Raiden as your on-field damage dealer. Me personally, I prefer running Yae on-field, and I run her on-field with Yao Yao as my healer / Dendro unit. But I will be trying it with Kirara, and I'll put a video out for that. You run Yae, Fischl, Yao Yao, or now you have the option of running Kirara, and then you run an Animo unit. That's about it on the banner review. So to close out the video, I just want to say sorry I missed the previous banner, the Baiju banner, but unfortunately life's got in the way, and over the next few months life's going to be consistently getting in the way. So the build along account that I was doing that was meant to be going along with this, it's been put on hold. But what I'm going to be trying to do to replace that is some more sort of chill theory crafting idea videos focusing on the characters that are on the banners. You know, I'll never be a Ziox or Zarjef with my guides. I'm not that good at the game, and I don't have Zarjef's crazy brain, but hopefully the videos will provide a bit more chill, fun ideas, a bit more realistic gameplay, you know, how these characters can be built and played by average Genshin player on an average Genshin account. You know, I don't have cracked artifacts. I don't, you know, I'm not a whale, so I'm not going to have huge constellations on any of them. So I think the first one I'm going to do is going to be Yae and a Yae Kirara video, because I want, I've already got Yae built and I've got a pretty good idea of how to play her, but I also want to try Kirara in that team, because one of the things that I always struggle with when playing Yae is the lack of resistance to interruption on her kit and on the kit of anybody in the team. So I want to see if having that Dendro shielder is going to make a difference, because there's a lot of content where I don't necessarily need the healing. So it's going to be interesting. I'm going to spend a few days building up Kirara, getting some artifacts for her, and we'll see how that goes. So hopefully you stick around for that. Like, sub, all that good stuff, and bye for now.